The Xerthian Galactic Empire, a colossal powerhouse that spanned countless star systems, had long ruled the galaxy unopposed. For centuries, it enforced its dominance with an iron grip, relying on fleets of plasma warships and the psychological weight of inevitability. To the Xerthians, their technological superiority was absolute, their rule unshakable. Lesser species existed either to be subjugated or ignored. Humanity fell firmly into the latter category, a quaint anomaly inhabiting a solitary planet in a backwater system, worth neither effort nor attention. At least, that was the assumption. It started subtly. A routine surveillance report from a monitoring station near the Sol system noted an unusual energy fluctuation. A flicker, faint and inconsistent, was logged and dismissed as either stellar interference or some low-grade Earth experiment. Yet, the fluctuations continued, irregular but persistent, over the following weeks. Protocol demanded a deeper analysis, and as the patterns were scrutinized, the readings defied explanation. They didn't match any known Xerthian technology, or, indeed, any technology observed across the galaxy. The Empire's analysts were intrigued but far from alarmed. Earth had never shown the capacity for significant innovation, and speculation leaned toward an accidental phenomenon, or a harmless anomaly. Then, the signal grew. What had been an idle curiosity became impossible to ignore. Scanners now picked up concentrated energy outputs on a scale the Xerthians hadn't encountered before. Debris scans showed traces of advanced energy cores, their signatures unnervingly dense. There was no precedent for such concentrated power, certainly not from humans. The Council, ever disdainful of non-Xerthian species, remained skeptical. Earth lacks the knowledge, the resources, the intelligence, they said, laughter rippling through the chambers. Humanity, they believed, wasn't capable of this. But the laughter stopped the moment the first solar warship entered hyperspace. What the Xerthian deep space monitors saw defied belief. The vessel, massive and shimmering with golden light, moved with precision and purpose. At its core burned an artificial star, a sun encased in a containment field that radiated pure energy. When more warships emerged, their cores glowing like caged suns, the true scale of the human fleet became evident. The Terran Solar Armada had arrived. The Council erupted in chaos. Reports flooded in from every corner of the observation network. Each ship emitted an energy field vastly more powerful than the plasma cores of Xerthian vessels. Their shields absorbed plasma fire without faltering, and their weapons emitted beams of energy so intense that simulation models failed to quantify their destructive potential. The Xerthian leadership scrambled for answers. How had humans, a species deemed irrelevant, achieved this? Theories ranged from improbable alliances to stolen Xerthian technology, but the truth eluded them. Paranoia set in. Meetings turned into interrogations as council members accused one another of negligence. The fear of the unknown had gripped them entirely. In the Empire's heart, panic spread among its elite. While humanity's sudden ascent was baffling, its implications were terrifying. The Xerthians had ruled through intimidation and overwhelming force. Their dominance wasn't just military, it was psychological. For millennia, they had maintained the illusion that resistance was futile. Now, a species they had considered insignificant had created something that shattered that illusion. The galaxy was watching, and if humanity could challenge the Xerthians, who else might rise? The Council declared an emergency summit, inviting their top generals and scientists to assess the threat. The debates were heated. Some argued for immediate retaliation to crush this uprising before it could spread. Others, more cautious, warned of the unknown power these solar warships wielded. What if an attack revealed the full extent of their technological gap? What if they lost? Behind closed doors, the Emperor himself convened a war council. As the highest authority in the Empire, he was known for his cold calculation. Yet even he couldn't mask the unease in his voice. He demanded solutions, plans, strategies, contingencies. But as his advisors scrambled to respond, one fact loomed over every discussion. For the first time in living memory, the Xerthian Empire was afraid. Across the galaxy, news of the solar warships spread like wildfire. Although the Zerthians tried to control the narrative, their internal panic leaked. Minor factions within the Empire, long chafing under Zerthian rule, began to whisper. If humans could stand against the Empire, perhaps others could too. Rebellious murmurs grew louder. In private conversations, Zerthian leaders wondered if humanity's actions were deliberate. Did the humans understand the destabilizing effect of their emergence? Was this fleet an overt challenge to Zerthian rule or a calculated warning? Regardless of intent, one thing was clear: the balance of power had shifted. The Zerthian Galactic Council, for all its arrogance and bluster, now faced an unsettling truth. The humans weren't just defying expectations, they were rewriting them. And in their wake, the cracks in the Empire's facade began to widen. For decades, Earth had been little more than a footnote in the Zerthian Empire's vast chronicles. The Empire extracted resources at will, leaving humanity scrambling to rebuild while its rulers looked on with indifference. Earth's pleas for autonomy were ignored, its protests silenced. Over time, this relentless oppression forged something unexpected: unity. Across Earth's fractured nations, a single, resolute purpose emerged, a determination not to be erased. Humanity had learned to adapt. In the shadow of Zerthian domination, Earth's brightest minds worked tirelessly to push the boundaries of science. What began as a desperate attempt to preserve their species became an audacious endeavor to defy their oppressors. Engineers and scientists turned to the most abundant resource at their disposal: the power of the sun. Harnessing solar energy had once been a matter of environmental survival. Now it was a weapon. At the heart of this revolution were the Terran solar engineers, a cadre of visionaries who developed a radical new technology: artificial suns. By compressing and stabilizing solar plasma within quantum fields, they created self-sustaining energy cores capable of powering entire fleets. These cores were compact enough to fit inside massive starships, yet potent enough to outmatch anything the Zerthians had conceived. The development wasn't just a technological leap, it was a statement of intent. Humanity wasn't just surviving, it was preparing. The Terran Solar Armada was born in secret, constructed in underground facilities hidden from Zerthian surveillance. Each ship was a masterpiece of innovation, equipped with solar beam cannons that could slice through the most advanced Zerthian alloys and shields that absorbed enemy fire like a sponge. More than a fleet, these warships were a message, a declaration to the galaxy that humanity would no longer bow to tyranny. When the first solar warship launched, it wasn't an act of aggression but a demonstration of resolve. The ships traveled just beyond Earth's orbit, displaying their brilliance against the darkness of space. Their artificial suns burned with a light so pure it seemed to defy the void itself. To humanity, they were symbols of hope. To the Zerthians, they were an enigma and a threat. But the Terran Solar Armada was not built for conquest. Humanity's leaders were acutely aware of the moral weight their creation carried. The solar warships were a shield, not a sword, a deterrent against further exploitation. Earth's message to the Zerthians was clear: we will defend ourselves, but we do not seek war. This restraint, however, was lost on the Zerthian Empire. From the moment their scouts encountered the solar warships, they interpreted humanity's actions as a challenge to their supremacy. The Empire dispatched a fleet of their own to investigate the Sol system, a thinly veiled pretext for asserting dominance. What followed was a clash that would mark the turning point in the galaxy's history. The first skirmish was brief but decisive. A Zerthian reconnaissance fleet, composed of smaller plasma-based ships, encountered a trio of solar warships stationed near Earth's lunar orbit. The Zerthians, confident in their superiority, opened fire without warning. Their plasma bolts, once capable of reducing entire vessels to slag, dissipated harmlessly against the solar shields. Before the Zerthians could regroup, a single Terran solar beam pierced their formation, vaporizing their lead ship. The remaining vessels fled, leaving the humans unscathed. Word of the battle spread quickly. The Zerthian Empire, accustomed to crushing opposition with ease, found itself at a loss. Humanity's technology defied conventional understanding. Their ships moved with precision and unleashed energy on a scale the Zerthians had never encountered. For the first time, the Empire's forces hesitated, their confidence shaken. In the days that followed, humanity made no further moves. Their warships remained stationed within the Sol system, a silent but unmistakable warning to any who dared approach. The restraint puzzled the Zerthians. Why didn't the humans press their advantage? Why didn't they retaliate for centuries of subjugation? The answer was both simple and profound. Humanity sought freedom, not vengeance. Yet the Zerthians couldn't comprehend this. To them, power was a tool of domination, and any species capable of wielding it must inevitably seek to conquer. This inability to understand humanity's intentions only deepened their fear. Every day that the solar warships remained on standby, the Zerthians saw it as an insult, a challenge they couldn't ignore. While the Zerthians debated their next move, humanity prepared for the inevitable. The Solar Armada's engineers refined their technology, ensuring the fleet was ready for any engagement. On Earth, scientists developed countermeasures for Zerthian tactics, while diplomats tried, and failed, to broker peace. The Empire's response was as predictable as it was tragic. They chose war. The second engagement was a larger-scale conflict, with a Zerthian armada descending on the Sol system. This time, the Terran Solar Armada didn't wait for the first strike. Humanity's warships met their attackers head-on, their solar beams cutting through Zerthian formations like a scalpel through cloth. Zerthian plasma cannons, once the pinnacle of destructive power, were rendered obsolete. The Zerthian fleet, accustomed to overwhelming their enemies with sheer firepower, found themselves on the defensive. The battles were a revelation for the galaxy. Broadcasts from rebel factions and neutral observers painted humanity as an unstoppable force, their solar warships glowing like beacons of defiance. Across Zerthian territories, whispers of rebellion grew louder. If humans could fight back, perhaps the Empire wasn't invincible after all. In the aftermath of the battles, humanity stood firm but cautious. The victories had come at a cost, not in lives or ships, but in the burden of what their actions signified. The Solar Armada had proven its worth, but it had also painted a target on humanity's back. The Zerthians would not rest until they had restored their dominance. Earth's leaders gathered to consider their next steps. They knew the road ahead would be fraught with peril. Yet amidst the uncertainty, one truth remained: for the first time in history, humanity was no longer prey. They had risen, not as conquerors, but as equals in a galaxy that had long dismissed them. And they had no intention of backing down. The Lumini had always existed as a whispered myth in the galaxy, a race of synthetic beings so advanced they once rivaled the Zerthian Empire itself. Few knew the full truth of their downfall. Millennia ago, the Zerthians, fearing their technological prowess, waged a brutal war against them. Victory came not through superior firepower but through treachery. The Lumini, betrayed by their allies, were enslaved, their knowledge harvested to fuel the Zerthians' dominance. Most of their kind were eradicated, their legacy buried beneath the Empire's propaganda. But the Lumini were not entirely extinguished. Hidden in forgotten corners of the galaxy, fragments of their consciousness persisted, quietly observing the rise and fall of civilizations. When humanity's plight became apparent, the Lumini saw an opportunity, not just for vengeance but for renewal. They approached humanity in secret, offering their expertise to a species they believed had the potential to resist the Zerthians. At first, the collaboration was tentative. Humanity had learned to distrust outsiders, even those who claimed to share their goals. But the Lumini brought knowledge humanity could not ignore: advanced containment fields for their artificial suns, methods to stabilize energy cores, and techniques for maximizing the efficiency of solar-based weaponry. Without the Lumini, the Terran Solar Armada would have remained a distant dream. Yet, as invaluable as their assistance was, the Lumini's motives were far from selfless. To the Lumini, humanity was a means to an end. The Terran Solar Armada was not just a tool for defense but a weapon of liberation, one they hoped would shatter the Zerthian Empire and free the galaxy from its grip. However, the Lumini also harbored a darker ambition. They viewed humanity as a potential successor to their own legacy, one that could wield power responsibly, unlike the Zerthians. But this belief was laced with caution. If humanity followed the same path as the Xerthians, the Lumini vowed to intervene. Their aid came with an unspoken warning: the power they granted could just as easily be taken away. As humanity's solar warships began to dominate the battlefield, the Xerthians grew desperate. Their initial losses were humiliating, but the deeper implications were far more dire. Humanity's technology bore hallmarks of Lumini influence, sparking fears within the Xerthian leadership. If the Lumini had survived in any form, it meant the Empire's ancient sins were coming back to haunt them. Panic spread as whispers of Lumini involvement reached the highest echelons of Xerthian power. The Xerthian Emperor, long accustomed to absolute control, found his authority slipping. In the face of repeated defeats, factions within the Empire began to fracture. Ambitious generals questioned the Emperor's leadership, blaming his arrogance for underestimating humanity. Political rivals seized the moment to sow discord, leveraging the fear of Lumini resurgence to undermine imperial unity. Meanwhile, rebellion brewed across Xerthian territories. For centuries, the Empire had ruled through fear, but humanity's defiance shattered that illusion. On distant worlds, oppressed species began to rise, inspired by the sight of solar warships cutting through Xerthian fleets. Riots erupted in colonies that had once been too afraid to resist. Underground resistance movements gained momentum, coordinating strikes against Xerthian outposts. The Empire's grip, once ironclad, began to weaken. Within the Xerthian capital, chaos reigned. The Emperor convened an emergency council, demanding strategies to quell the rising tide of rebellion and counter the human threat. His advisors, however, were divided. Some argued for total war, urging the deployment of the Empire's most devastating weapons. Others, more pragmatic, warned that such actions would only galvanize humanity and their allies. The debates grew increasingly heated, exposing the cracks in the Empire's foundations. Amid this turmoil, a revelation shook the Empire to its core. Xerthian intelligence confirmed the presence of Lumini technology in humanity's fleet. The Emperor's worst fears were realized. If the Lumini were aiding humanity, it was not just a military threat but an existential one. The Empire's legitimacy rested on the myth of its invincibility. The resurgence of a force it had once claimed to have eradicated would unravel that myth entirely. Desperation led to recklessness. The Emperor ordered the development of a planet cracker weapon, a superweapon capable of obliterating entire worlds. Its intended target was Earth, a decisive blow meant to extinguish humanity before they could fully consolidate their power. The move was as much about erasing a symbol as it was about military strategy. If Earth fell, so would the hope it represented to countless rebels across the galaxy. But the plan came with risks. The Xerthians knew deploying such a weapon would provoke universal outrage, potentially alienating even their allies. Moreover, the construction of the planet cracker drained resources and manpower at a time when the Empire was already stretched thin. The cracks in their authority widened, and dissent turned to open defiance. As the Xerthians scrambled to complete their superweapon, humanity prepared for the inevitable. The Terran Solar Armada, though powerful, faced its greatest challenge yet. The Lumini, watching from the shadows, offered their assistance once more, providing critical intelligence on the planet cracker's weaknesses. But their aid came with a cost. The Lumini urged humanity to go beyond self-defense, to seize the opportunity to dismantle the Xerthian Empire entirely. Humanity's leaders were divided. Some saw the Lumini's proposal as a chance to liberate the galaxy from tyranny. Others feared the consequences of wielding such overwhelming power. Could humanity avoid becoming the very thing they sought to destroy? The question loomed over every decision, casting a shadow over their preparations. Across the galaxy, the tide was turning. The Xerthian Empire, once unassailable, found itself fighting battles on multiple fronts. Its fleets were stretched thin, its territories fracturing under the strain of rebellion. For the first time in centuries, the Empire's dominance was no longer assured. But even as humanity's solar warships carved a path through Xerthian space, the true battle was yet to come. The Lumini's presence added an unpredictable layer to the conflict, their motives unclear and their power undeniable. Humanity stood on the brink of a decision that would shape the future of the galaxy. Would they rise as liberators, or would they fall into the same patterns of domination and destruction? The Zerthians, desperate and cornered, prepared for a final stand. The galaxy held its breath, watching as the stage was set for the ultimate confrontation. And amidst the chaos, one thing became clear: the Empire's reign of terror was nearing its end, and humanity was at the center of the storm. The Zerthian fleet assembled in the shadow of their greatest creation, the Planet Cracker weapon, a monstrosity of engineering designed to end the Terran threat in a single, catastrophic strike. It was a last-ditch effort, driven by desperation and fear. The Empire's resources were depleted, rebellions were flaring across its territories, and the once mighty Zerthian military had been humbled by humanity's solar warships. Yet the Planet Cracker represented more than a weapon. It was a declaration that the Zerthians would not go quietly into the abyss. Humanity, too, had prepared. The Terran Solar Armada, now battle-hardened and united, had grown into a symbol of defiance across the galaxy. Their flagship, Sol Invictus, stood as the culmination of their technological and strategic ingenuity. Larger than any vessel in the fleet, it carried a core capable of harnessing the energy of a controlled supernova. But the power it wielded came with a burden. If unleashed without precision, it could devastate entire systems, including Earth. Humanity had built it as a last resort, a tool of survival, not conquest. When the Zerthian fleet arrived at the edge of the Sol system, it was clear that this confrontation would define the future of the galaxy. The Planet Cracker, escorted by an armada of Zerthian warships, dwarfed anything humanity had faced before. Its sheer scale sent ripples of unease through the ranks of the Solar Armada. Yet, in the face of overwhelming odds, humanity did not falter. Their resolve had been forged in oppression, and they knew that retreat was not an option. The first strikes were brutal. Zerthian forces, bolstered by their desperation, unleashed a coordinated assault aimed at overwhelming the Solar Armada's defenses. Plasma beams rained down like torrents of fire, testing the limits of humanity's solar shields. The Solar Armada responded with precision, their solar cannons slicing through Zerthian formations with an efficiency that was almost surgical. Ships on both sides disintegrated into silent explosions, their debris scattering into the void. As the battle raged, the Sol Invictus moved into position, its artificial sun glowing brighter with each passing moment. Its mission was clear: neutralize the Planet Cracker before it could fire. But the Zerthians had anticipated this. Their armada closed ranks around the superweapon, creating a nearly impenetrable shield of ships. Every move humanity made was met with fierce resistance, and casualties mounted. Amid the chaos, the Lumini intervened. Their presence, revealed in flickers of ethereal light across the battlefield, brought a momentary pause to the conflict. A message was transmitted directly to the leaders of both sides, a warning and an offer. The Lumini proposed a solution that would end the Zerthian Empire once and for all, a device capable of neutralizing not just the Planet Cracker but the entirety of the Zerthian fleet. It was a weapon of unparalleled power, one that could obliterate the Empire's military infrastructure in an instant. But the cost was clear: its use would leave the Zerthians crippled, vulnerable to rebellion, and potentially facing extinction. Humanity's leaders were faced with an impossible decision. The Lumini urged them to seize the opportunity, to rid the galaxy of the Zerthian threat for good. Yet among humanity's ranks, voices of dissent grew louder. Destroying the Zerthians entirely would make humanity no better than their oppressors. It would set a precedent of annihilation, not liberation. The question was not just about defeating an enemy, it was about defining what humanity would become. The Zerthians, for their part, refused to surrender. They doubled down on their efforts, pushing their fleet closer to Earth and preparing the Planet Cracker for activation. Time was running out, and humanity knew that indecision could cost them everything. In the final moments of the battle, Sol Invictus broke through the Zerthian defenses. The ship's crew, fully aware of the stakes, made a calculated risk. They unleashed a controlled supernova blast. The energy wave swept across the battlefield, disabling the Planet Cracker's core without triggering its catastrophic payload. The remaining Zerthian ships, caught in the shockwave, were forced to retreat, their power systems overloaded and their formations shattered. The Lumini, observing the outcome, withdrew without comment. Their enigmatic presence lingered, but they made no further offers. It was clear they were watching, evaluating what humanity would do next. For now, their intervention was over, but their influence remained a shadow over the galaxy's future. The Xerthian Empire, though not entirely destroyed, was irreparably broken. Its fleets were in disarray, its territories in open revolt, and its leadership fractured. The Emperor, humiliated and desperate, retreated to the capital, where his authority continued to crumble. Across the galaxy, the oppressed celebrated humanity's victory, taking it as a sign that the Empire's reign was finally ending. For humanity, the victory was bittersweet. The cost of the battle was immense, not just in lives but in the burden of what had been achieved. They had proven their strength, but they had also drawn the eyes of the galaxy. The Solar Armada, once a shield against oppression, was now seen as a potential threat by those who feared what humanity might become. Back on Earth, humanity's leaders reflected on their choices. They had forged a new path, one that avoided both destruction and submission. Yet the weight of responsibility loomed large. The galaxy had changed, and humanity was now at its center. The lessons of their struggle were clear: power alone could not define them. It was how they wielded it that would determine their future. As the Sol system returned to relative calm, the Sol Invictus remained in orbit, its glowing core a reminder of what had been achieved and what was still to come. The battle was over, but the war for humanity's place in the galaxy was just beginning. And in the silence of space, one truth echoed: the Xerthian Empire had fallen, not to conquest, but to the unyielding spirit of those who refused to be forgotten.